So as I was saying, now going into the next character, Moses, there's such enormity, an absolute ginormity of information and truth to unpack in the patterns in the story of Moses. An absolute enormity. And in Stephen's defense, as far as word count, Stephen gives Moses the biggest props. The most word count in Stephen's defense goes to Moses with good reason, because there's an absolute enormity in Moses. And so this whole week, how do I unpack Moses in an hour? Because I don't know, I wouldn't have the slightest doubt. And on the Friday morning study, when we went through this, I paraphrased through Moses, and it took me 4 weeks just to paraphrase. And that's an hour and a half. So there's 6 hours of paraphrasing, and I've got an hour to do it. So I said, Lord, how am I going to do this? And he wouldn't tell me. So I woke up this morning early because I said, man, I would really like some direction. And the Lord reminded me of back in December, when Austin had asked me to teach. He said, what are you going to teach on? I said, well, I don't know. He was like, give me a topic. I said, all right, Acts chapter 7. I just finished doing it Friday morning. And then I was praying about it. And the Lord was like, well, you could either do that or you can just show up. See what happens. I'm like, well, I kind of like that format. Just see where it goes. And I'm prepared. I'm ready. And it was really, it wouldn't probably been a good idea if I did that, because we would have been really all over the place. So there's one's like, Lord, just show up. That's what he told me. And I know there's just something in my belly that's going to just pop out. And I'm excited to see what it is. I don't know what it is yet. So, Moses. Moses. So, we're all aware, you've heard of the Song of Moses and the Song of the Lamb. In the end days, there will be a cloud of witnesses that are going to sing a new song. And that is both the Song of Moses and the Song of the Lamb. The law and of Christ. And it's a very long song, both of them. So really, it was about 15 minutes ago or so, somewhere between right before worship and during worship, that I kind of have direction, somewhat direction on what to do today, which is cool. So Stephen breaks off the story of Moses in 3 sections. So what we'll do is we'll take a really high-level look at each of these 3 major sections of Moses' life, and see what good teacher Holy Spirit's going to do. So we pick up the story right around verse 17, because right before that, we covered last week the story of Joseph. So from 17 through 43, kind of into 44. We're going to stop on 43 today.
Are we in Acts?
Yeah. Well, this is an Acts study. We won't be here. We won't be here for long.
No, that's why I asked.
We won't be here for long, but we'll start there. Yeah. So Acts 7, starting in 17 through 43. So can somebody read loudly from 17 through 29?
But when the time of the promise drew near, which God had sworn to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt, till another king arose who did not know Joseph. This man dealt treacherously with our people and oppressed our forefathers, making them expose their babies so that they might not live. At this time, Moses was born and was well-pleasing to God, and he was brought up in his father's house for 3 months. But when he was set out, Pharaoh's daughter took him away and brought him up as her own. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deed. Now, when he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended and avenged him who was oppressed and struck down the Egyptian. For he supposed that his brethren would have understood that God would deliver them by his hand. But they did not understand. And the next day he appeared to two of them as they were fighting and tried to reconcile them, saying, Men, you are brethren. Why do you wrong one another? But he who did his neighbor wrong pushed him away, saying, Who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Moses. Do you want to kill me as you did the Egyptian yesterday? Then, at this saying, Moses fled and became a dweller in the land of Midian, where he had 2 sons.
Okay. So that's the first 40 years of his life. And then since he mentions the second one, I threw it up there. So there's 3 periods of 40 years of Moses' life. The first one is him in Egypt. So let's, the best that we can, let's look at the beginning stages of Moses. And that will be found in Exodus chapter 1.
Now, I didn't read all of Acts that you said. Did you want me to read? Because I thought you said to stop partway.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
I'm good.
You
Okay.
did perfect.
Oh, okay.
Excellent job.
Oh, all right.
Couldn't be
I
better.
thought you said to go further.
You read it like Melchizedek.
Good.
All right, so where Stephen quoted that there was another king that arose over Egypt that did not know about Joseph, that is quoted from Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. So the 12 tribes in the beginning of Exodus are named that came out of Canaan, except for Joseph because he was already in Egypt. And then, so if we read all this stuff, we'd be here forever, so I'm just going to paraphrase. So we have this story now where Joseph provides for his brothers. Come. That whole story of forgiveness and redemption and beauty in Judah and Joseph and Benjamin is now finished. Israel moves over. And 400 years now passes. And during this process of 400 years, the Israel, who first was highly revered in Egypt, because it was by Joseph that Egypt was saved. Let me say that again. By Joseph, Egypt was saved, so they rejoiced. And so much so that Pharaoh said, hey, take my chariots, take my men. We're going to set up a really nice place for your family in Goshen. So now for 400 years, during this period of time, that story had gone to naught. And what started off as a really awesome thing then turned into true slavery. And the pharaohs began abusing the Israelites. But the Israelites were very prolific in nature. There was no TV. So they were very prolific, and so the tribe was expanding very, very rapidly. So the pharaoh's like, wait a second here. This group of people is growing out of control. So much so that they can overthrow the kingdom. So we have an idea. Let's kill all the firstborn males. There's a couple ladies on the scene. They're supposed to be taking part of this. They don't. Awesome story within itself. We'll keep moving. So during this period, in the days of when Moses was born, they were slaying the boys in order to do some population control. So Moses is beautiful. Anybody know what his name means? Drawn from the water. Yeah. Drawn from the water. And Pharaoh's daughter gives him that name because Moses' mom puts him in a wicker basket, wrapped with pitch, leaves him in the Nile. Pharaoh's daughter comes down to bathe, says, wow, what a beautiful baby. It just so happens that Moses' sister was there, saw what was going on, goes to says, by the way, I know this Hebrew woman that could nurse him for you. Sure, no problem. And then when he's ready, send him on.
But is the word for that basket
An ark?
It is the same word or
No.
different?
It's not.
Okay.
No,
I can never remember that.
no, it's not. And often talked about Moses as being in an ark, which is really a romantic story. And it, perhaps if somebody could show me where it is, but it's actually a basket. The Hebrew word for basket. It's not the Ark of Noah. And it's certainly not the name of the ark that is in the Holy of Holies, because that ark is actually a coffin. Well, that's probably next week. So now Moses is in a basket. Pharaoh's daughter says, "What a beautiful boy." Moses' mom now nurses him, gives him back to Pharaoh, and now Moses is now in Pharaoh's house and is trained in all the things of the world. I mean, all the things of Egypt. Is there another story, maybe that we read last week, that sounds similar to this? Oh, isn't that interesting? So, isn't that interesting too? So you stole my thunder. So, that's all good. So there's 3 stories here of these chosen people of God, Joseph, Moses, and Christ, all chosen, but then spend a whole bunch of time sold or refuged in Egypt. Really awesome stuff. I'll get to that in a second. That's why I left space down here. So I drew him out of water, and now Moses comes to about the age of 40. And he enters into his heart, is the proper translation. That word, many say it's entered into his mind, but that word there in the Greek, as far as when Stephen said it, was he enters into his heart and says, I must return back to my brethren, because I'm going to save them. In his heart, I'm going to save them. So he goes back and he sees an Egyptian mistreating one of his brethren. He kills the Egyptian and buries him in the sand. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to get this under control. So he goes back, he sees his brothers fighting the next day. He says, hey, what are you guys doing? Why, you guys are brothers, why are you doing this? His brother in turn and says, oh, who appointed you a ruler and a judge? Go study Judges. And who's going to appoint you a ruler and a judge over us? What are you going to do? You're going to kill me like you did the Egyptian yesterday? No, so the story picks up in chapter 2, verse 15. So when Pharaoh heard of this matter, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the presence of Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. And they had come to draw water and fill troughs up to water their father's flock. And when the shepherds came, he drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, why have you come so soon today? An Egyptian delivered us from the hand of the shepherds. So this priest named Reuel shows up on the scene. He says, well, go get him. Bring him back. He helped you. And he had 7 daughters, which is very interesting, isn't it? So then, verse 20, he said to his daughters, where is he then? Why is it that you have left the man behind? Invite him to have something to eat. Moses was willing to dwell with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses. And she gave birth to a son and named him Gershom. And he said, I had been a sojourner in a foreign land. So the name Gershom is to be a foreigner or an alien in a foreign land. So the firstborn son of Moses is Gershom. For extra credit, anybody know what his brother's name is? He has 2 sons. It's an awesome name, used many times in Scripture. Eliezer is the second born son of Moses, and his name is God is my helper. And that is found in Exodus 18. So I'm going to have to look at this because I'm a terrible speller. So in Exodus 18, verse 3, and her two sons, one was named Gershom, for Moses said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land, and the other's name was Eliezer, for he said, God of my father was my help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. That's the only time Eliezer is mentioned, as far as, it's noted in Chronicles, but as far as a story of Eliezer or Gershom, that's all we know is their namesake, which also, first and second, fits the pattern of God is my help. Because in my first identity, I'm an alien in a foreign land. But in my second identity, God is my help. He is my refuge, who has rescued me from Egypt. Okay, so back to Exodus 3. So we'll pick up the story there. So now, this first section of Moses' life only occupies really 2.5 chapters of Exodus. That's it. So I'm going to move on because there's more that we can dive into. But as far as with my time allotment, we're going to try and move on past that. Because the real meat is in the next couple sections of his life. So, this is what goes down in Egypt. He now flees to the land of Midian, finds a wife, has 2 sons. There's a story to be told in just the story of his father-in-law. His father-in-law has 3 names. Anybody know what those names are? Jethro is one. Ruel. And for true extra credit, is Hobab. And that's found in the book of 2 Kings. So, and the name Ruel means friend of God. Jethro means excellence or abundance or cup overfloweth. And Hobab means love fervently and cherish. So those are the 3 namesakes of Jethro. And if you do your own studies, stick to the Bible, because if you go to Google University on this, it will confuse the life out of you. As this guy's a brother-in-law and that may be a cousin, and basically scholars explain things away because they don't get it. So they just come up with these cultural, contextual things. And I'm still looking for where the cultural context of 4,000 or 5,000 years ago is. I have a hard time looking up people.com or the Inquirer of Moses' day where we can get cultural context. We'll just stick to the book. So, the next story is now he's in the land of Midian. And there's really not a lot going on as far as the life of what happens there is really not recorded. So he spends 40 years there, has 2 kids, has a wife, and now he's pasturing his father-in-law's flock on this mountain. So we're going to pick it up in chapter 3 of Exodus, because now it really starts to get fun. So chapter 3 of Exodus, now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, or Ruel, or Hobab, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb. If you have a Bible, please circle Horeb. I know a few months ago during the Feast of the New Creation, for those who were here, I did a very quick synopsis on Horeb. We're going to do it again today because it is so pinnacle. So, Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So now we usher in, so the land of him 40 years in Midian just got summed up in a few sentences. So there's clearly not a lot to talk about there. But at the end of that story, we have this burning bush story. So keep your finger there, and let's go back to Acts 7, and let's see what Stephen has to say about this. So somebody pick up from verse 30 through 36.
And when 40 years had passed, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire in a bush in the wilderness of Mount Sinai.
Wait a second. I thought we just said horror. Why is it? Why did Stephen just write Sinai here? All right, keep going.
When Moses saw it, he marveled at the sight, and as he drew near to observe, the voice of the Lord came to him, saying, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses trembled and dared not look. Then the Lord said to him, Take your sandals off your feet, boy, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Let's get a little heavy in here.
What does this say?
We're cheap. I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their groaning and have come down to deliver them. And now, come, I will send you to Egypt. This Moses whom they rejected, saying, Who made you a ruler and a judge? Is the one God sent to be a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the angel who appeared to him in the bush. He brought them out. After he had shown wonders and signs in the land of Egypt, and in the Red Sea, and in the wilderness 40 years.
Okay. So, this story of the burning bush. Let's go back to Exodus now. When I'm in my own studies, sometimes I wish I had more than 10 fingers so I can keep my place. So, this takes place at the mountain of God called Horeb, but Stephen calls it Sinai. Who is Stephen speaking to when this happens?
The lawgivers.
High priest.
Those under the law.
Yeah.
The high priest was probably there. Okay, so let's look at, so the audience of Stephen, he's talking to those who are under the law.
They should know all this stuff.
That should know all of these things. But in Exodus, it's pretty clear that this is taking place at Horeb. Okay. So the angel of the Lord appears to him in the burning from blazing fire in the midst of the bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was on fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I must turn aside now to see this marvelous sight. And why the God bless you. And the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned and looked to look aside, God called him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses, here I am. Do not come near me. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said also, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid. The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters. For I am aware of their suffering, so I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from the land which is good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanite, the Hittite, Amorite, Perizzite, Jebusite, Hivite. Now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression which the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly, I will be with you. And this shall be the sign that this shall be the sign to you, that is I who have sent you there. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. What is this mountain called? Horeb. Okay. Then Moses said to God, Behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and they will say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you. And what will they say to me? What is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God furthermore said to Moses, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial name to all generations. I am is the memorial name to all generations. Where does that come up again? I am.
Jesus.
Somebody tell me about it.
Jesus said that somewhere.
He
He was
did.
teaching, and the people really got mad and tried to stone him because he
Was
said.
he teaching?
No, he was on trial.
He was on trial. He was before the
Okay, he's
Sanhedrin.
on trial.
He's getting whip scourged. And he said, are you king of the Jews?
Oh, yeah.
I am.
He said it some other places too.
Many times, you're right. He starts off many statements with I am. But one big one, as far as his identity, is I am.
And when he said it, they all fell on the ground.
And when he said it, they all fell on the ground. I am.
This is when he was being whipped.
He's before the Sanhedrin. This is the
Oh.
Passion weekend. The
I
Passion.
remember that. I'll have to look it up.
They whipped him first,
Yep.
crown, that's when they gave him a
Crown of thorns.
And then they take him before the Sanhedrin. He said, you keep saying you're the king of the Jews, what say you? And he's not responding, and finally he just says, I am. And they all follow
And they
him.
fell.
Because here he is, as king, with a crown, wrapped in purple, bleeding. I am. So, the I am, who is going to set the prisoners free from Egypt? I am.
I am is present tense.
This shall be my memorial name to all generations.
So no matter where you are, it's present tense.
I am.
And then we often say like, I am your name. And there's a lot of power, a lot of stuff going on there when you say I am.
In Hebrew tradition, now this is not,
Sure.
in Hebrew tradition, that word is more than just, I am. It's actually all the names of God sung
Yes.
together. And so,
And how many names does God have?
20 gazillion.
as far as I know, it's 70.
There's roughly 70. One of the major ones that is used is Elohim, the plural God. But there are many. But as far as God's titles, there are 7.
Oh, official titles.
Right? So
I
there's
see.
7 titles of God. And you have all the Jehovahs. Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Jireh, so on and so forth. God of love, God of peace, God of provision, God of healing, so on and so forth. So when it says I am, is the encompassment of all of them. All of these things. I am. So when Christ stands there before he is crucified and says I am, is testifying that the Word had become flesh, that God dwelt on earth. Every aspect of God dwelt on earth. And it just so happens every aspect of this God we're referring to dwells in you.
Sounds like they all bow whether they want to or not, whether they wanted to or not.
There will be a day, though, when every knee will bow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this story now of Moses having an encounter with I am, and go and get my people and bring them back to this mountain. When, just so you know, you can do a search on this, when Sinai is mentioned, it's never referred to as the Holy Mountain. So the Holy Mountain is Horeb. And do a search on Horeb, and when that comes up, in the life of Moses, in the life of Elijah, the life of Elisha, and so on and so forth, and it's really, really awesome. So, he goes,